What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another builds or ranking your builds. I think this is part 3, and we got some pretty big names per what the title says. But basically, if you don't know this series, we just go on, look at people's builds, whether it's yours or just people who play ranked Joust in general. I think the last one we did was Barty and Cosmos, which was pretty interesting as they are Giga gamers. And before that, we went over some viewers. So if you'd like to have your builds reviewed or even just join the Discord and ask me questions, the Discord link is in the description down below if you'd like. It's the easiest way to contact me about any type of questions or being in a video per se, I guess. So, but without further ado, let's get into it. Today we have our boy Weekend, Inbowned, and it's grayed out here, but it's El Leon. So very high skilled gamers who mainly main Conquest. They decided to come over to Joust, and they trio stack, and they're obviously, just because they're just better players in general, it's more of a skill diff rather than a build diff, as we'll see here. But they did go up against some other ranked Joust mains in activation. I think one of these was Pitbull, and I can't remember the other one. So pretty high skill ranked Jousters. And as you can see, they actually lost this game, and that's just because I just think Joust and Conquest are totally different. And so if you're going to come over to Joust, it's not going to be like one and done. You're going to be able to beat everyone or anyone just because you're better at the game. You also have to have like knowledge of Joust and builds and stuff like that, which if you look at these builds, definitely their builds are a lot better. But we're going to go over Weekend's, Inbound's, and El Leon's build. Starting off with our boy Weekend. Well, first of all, their team is kind of dog ass, so they kind of had a, and they had a Rajan, Surcat, and Fafnir being disgusting, Surcat I think being one of the most Surcat being one of the most underrated assassins right now, and Rajan just being a very solid mage. Inbound nut, and I'm sorry, Sylvanas nut, and Morgan just not that great. But yeah, we got our boy Lord Doctor Professor Mr. Michael with us too, so this should be great. So starting out with Nut. So we looked at all these builds a little bit beforehand just to get an idea. But starting out with Nut. Nut is a character that you can kind of go ability based and kind of hybrid. Because of her 1 and obviously her 2, 3, and her ult have some type of ability based in her kit. And so you can do that. But so he went first into Death's Toll, and then obviously into Death's Embrace, Soul Eater, Executioner Kins, Oboe, and Titan's Bane. Starting from the Xe on to Titan's Bane, this build is perfect. And although I did go over my builds review or my meta update, I think Death's Toll is a fine item right now. I don't like it as much as Cowl and upgrading it to Hunter's Cowl. But it's an okay item. It's really good. It's better in Conquest. And then Soul Eater is solid on Night, just not into this team comp. I don't feel like you really need all that. So, I mean, that's kind of where I start out right now. I don't know how you feel about this start.
I was gonna say this build is very good for Conquest, which makes sense because they're all generally Conquest players, and they're kind of just carrying it over to Joust. This build is definitely serviceable. It does everything that you want it to do, especially when it works with Nut's kit, because obviously her 1 procs ability-based damage, including obviously basic attack, because it serves as both an ability and an auto attack. And then she's got good ability-based damage and her other abilities, including her ult. So I can see why you would want to go Soul Eater there, but I'm not the biggest fan of Death's Embrace there. I would much rather see a Leather Cowl, specifically for Joust. And even in Conquest, I still wouldn't go Death's Embrace. I'd rather go Death's Temper instead, because that item is actually disgusting in terms of damage.
Yeah.
Soul Eater for the lifesteal and everything, although it does work with her kit, I don't think it really works too well in Joust for her. And I also don't think that penetration is really going to be doing anything against their team, except for maybe the Rajan.
You're not going to get to that Rajan, though.
The rest of it, though, the Xe, Kins, and Oboe, I like a lot. That's usually universal you'd want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Titan's Bane is also good as well, especially for her. I think that you could keep that in there, but in terms of the build that I would normally go on her, you probably switch around. If you wanted to go Death's Toll early, that's fine. It's not my preference. I'd rather go Leather's Cow, but if you did go into an upgraded Death's Toll star, go into Death's Temper instead. I think that's better.
Yep.
And then probably don't go Soul Eater at all. I'm not the biggest fan of Soul Eater at all. Probably go into a Dominance early, just the straight up Dominance, the MP5 and the 20% pen early.
Yep.
Then probably go straight into Weak3n's. And then I'd probably go into an Aussie for the lifesteal instead of the Soul Eater and do it late so that you already have some power. You don't want to get Aussie earlier on because you're not going to get much out of it. You're just going to get a weaker damage item with subpar healing because the healing is scaling off your total damage. So you need to get a few items on before you actually feel the healing. And then last item, you could either go Oboe or Titan's Bane. I'd prefer to go Oboe, but that's just my opinion. But you can't. There's a perfectly good argument to go Titan's Bane as well, especially for her kit.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd either go upgrade Leather's Cowl, probably into, I believe, the Hunter's Cowl, or Death's Temper. I prefer Leather's Cowl. Then Dominance, Xe, Kins, Aussie, and then either Oboe or Titan's Bane. It's your choice. They're both solid items for her.
Yeah.
The biggest stinker here, though, for me is Soul Eater. I'm not a fan of that at all in this context. I think that's okay in Conquest, but not in Joust for her.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking at this more, and I just don't really like the Soul Eater, obviously.
I especially don't like the Death's Embrace here, though.
Yeah.
I think that's
more of a warrior.
Actually, yeah, that's more of a stink than a Soul Eater is, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, like everything he said, Death's Temper, don't like Soul Eater. I don't really like it either. One item that I do want to pay attention, that you also want to pay attention to, is Silver Branch. Certain gods that have innate auto attack in their kit, whether that's a stim or, in this case, Nut's passive, where she does get auto attack in her passive, you can actually get max attack speed and get some of those stacks for Silver Branch too. So that's an awesome item here. We're going to go into the build here in a second after we give our rating. So for Weak3n's nut build, what would you give it?
So considering 4 out of the 6 items are pretty much on point, and then even the other 2 that I wouldn't normally go, that being Embrace and Soul Eater, they still do give him lifesteal. I get the idea behind that. I just think Aussie would be better in this context, and also just Temper or Leather Cowl.
Yeah.
They do still serve the purpose of doing damage and sustaining yourself. I just don't think they're the right items for Joust. But because it's still a serviceable build, I'd give it a solid 7.5.
Okay. Nice. Very similar. I like the build maybe a little bit better, but not by much. It's just these 2 items for me. I would probably give it an 8.
So good and tasty.
Just because I think I like Embrace a little, or not Embrace, sorry, Death's Toll a little bit more. Obviously, Death's Embrace I still wouldn't go into, but
well, if he went into Death's Temper instead,
it'd be different.
My score would have went up to around like an 8 or an 8.5. But I don't like Embrace on her at all.
Yeah, I see what he's doing here. Flat Pen isn't gonna do much, anything like that. So I understand that, but we're gonna go ahead and go into the game. We're gonna make our general build, and we're gonna add a couple items in there. Just so you know, I mean, if you've seen my meta update builds, it's very similar to that. But specifically with Nut, in this context, I think auto attack build is a little bit better here. So we'll go into the game right now. All right, here we have Nut. So like we said earlier, you can go Death's Toll, but I do like going into just a cowl. Actually, it's not Hunter's Cowl, it's Leader's Cowl. That's really good right now. So you'd obviously go... not Hunter's Cowl. I can't remember the first name part of it. Leather's Cowl. You obviously go Leather's Cowl, but eventually go into Leader's Cowl. You can go Death's Toll, but again, we're just gonna put this as like an honorable mention. If you're gonna go Death's Toll, you should go Death's Temper later in the game. Death's Embrace is more for your ability based. I'm sorry, your auto attack based warriors. We like Dominance, especially against their team. They had a Sarkett and a Fafnir who they're building tanky, so early pen's gonna be really good. They both build Gauntlet Thieves really early, so they already basically have 100 protections of each. and then getting more as the game goes on. So then you would go into Xe. Their team, they didn't have a lot of shields, or I mean, they had Pridwin from like Fafnir, for example. So you could go Ferocious Executioner. Either or is pretty good. So we're just gonna stick with the Executioner. That's what Weak3n built. After that, Kins, and this is just basically the same old build. You want to be able to kill those tanks, just destroy them. And then this is gonna be my build. We're gonna go ahead and add a couple items that he was talking about too, which is also very good, interchangeable. But after Kins, you go Odysseus's bow, just to get more attack speed, more damage with the procs of their autos. And then last item I would go honestly is Silver Branch. He went Titan's Bane, which is obviously a good item, so we're gonna put Titan's Bane down here. Put Titan's Bane down here. But yeah, this would be my build. Very, very similar, and obviously Silver Branch going with her kit. Now, like I said earlier, ability base, you can go ability base with her, or a hybrid mix of two. In this specific team comp, I think just having autos is just going to be better. Serket is very not sneaky, but like she's able to get away all the time with her 3 and her 1. And then Fafnir is super hard to kill too, so you know the abilities that you're going to be doing if you win ability base is just not going to be good. And also seeing as you had a Morgan that has ability based damage too, so I think the auto attack based build here would be so much better. And then Mike was talking about Aussie, so we can put that down here too, because Aussie, like he said earlier, you can interchange it with you know, Oboe, and then maybe go Oboe later, or you can go Aussie then Silver Branch, or Aussie Titan's Bane. There's a lot of options here. You can interchange these 4 items. It really just depends on what you want. If you want to have more sustain with Aussie, you can interchange with this. Titan's Bane, if you want even more percent pen, just so you can just kill the tanks even more, then you can. If you want Silver Branch with that, basically best of both worlds, giving you attack speed and penetration, obviously not as much as Titans, but also gives you a really killer passive. I mean, these just can be interchanged a lot. And then obviously Death's Temper can be in here if you're going to go Death's Toll. Yeah, that's basically the build. And then, like I said, I gave him what did I give him? 8, and he gave him a 7.5. So, on to the next god. I think we're going to Sylvanas. All right, and then we have Inbound, the Sylvanas build. This one I think is probably the worst the build out of here, and even then, it's not like the worst thing in the world that I've seen. But Sylvanas is an uphill type of god because he's not that great either. He's probably one of the worst guardians. And that's saying, it's not really saying a lot, because every single guardian in Jet, like half the guardian pool is like busted in this fucking game mode, so bound to have something. But Sylvanas isn't like terrible. You can get the job done with Sylvanas. But so he went into a very interesting build. He went Cannonier's Cuirass, he went Warrior's Axe, Genji's Guard, Genoviso, Sovereignty, and then the last item, Pridwin. Now this isn't a bad build. You have 30% CDR, you have a lot of protections with Cannoneers, Genjis, Sovereignty, and Pridwin with this passive as well. I just think there's just a way better build here. So
yeah, and also considering that Sylvanas isn't really, so there's different ways to build certain guardians and also warriors. He's building kind of a little bit of both. So Genji's is more of a selfish item, which is fine. Like characters like Cthulhu or Fafnir, like obviously the other Fafnir builds Genjis. You usually want to reserve the more selfish items for characters that are more bruiser oriented. Typically, if you're like a Geb or rather a Jeb or a Sylvanas or any other more supportive character, you want to.
One sec, he's getting cut out. All right, he got cut off. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, so usually when you're building like selfish items like Genjis and all that, it's more so for guardians or warriors that are more selfish. So like the Fafnir, for instance. The Fafnir is more of a bruiser character. Same thing with like Cthulhu. That's fine. They can kind of get away with doing that. Sylvanas, on the other hand, there's just too many more better like support. He's him and like Jeb, Ganesh. There's other characters that are more true support characters that Genji's building this more selfish item. While it's not the worst thing in the world, there's just a lot of better items that you can go to be actually fulfilling your true role of like helping your team. So that out of the way, just specifically for Genji's. Axe, I don't think is the worst thing in the world in Sylvanas, but I think Sands of Time into alternate timeline would better fit him for the cooldown and just the
MP5 stuff like that.
MP5 and being able to survive late game as well, the increased prots and the being able to come back to life. I think that's better. You can go Axe if you like. I just don't. I'm not a big fan of it on Sylvanas in particular. I think it's better on other Guardians than him. The Gem of Isolation got buffed to high hell as a recent, so did Frostbite Hammer. So I think it's actually a good item on him. I don't know if I would have built it this early on. Probably would have built that like last item, just get the tank stats online. Sovereignty is one of the worst items so far on this list, just because there's just better FizzD. I don't necessarily Breastplate of Valor. It's got a glyph. You got a bunch of other. You can go like even Midgard, although they don't really have any auto attack characters. But even so, I'd rather go Breastplate over Sob any day of the week, or just any other item for the most part. Sob's not really that good right now. You can
especially
even go
on your team
if you wanted to, yeah. Third one's good. Third one's actually really good. It's just in my build that I'd probably go. It's just something different though, just because of the other items I go. And I glossed over it too. I didn't even get to it. Cannonier's Caress. I see what he was doing there in the very beginning, trying to get everybody else some extra gold. This is one of the worst items in the game currently. It's not worth going like almost
pretty bad.
ever. It's pretty bad. That's like nobody ever builds this, and for good reason. It's just not good. In particular because you want to be a true support. You want to help out your team. Emphasize that. And specifically because Sylvanas procs it so well, because he's a healing character. You want to really go into items such as Relic Dagger, Lotus Sickle, just because first of all you can just keep on blink ulting people. It's almost similar to Geb ult essentially. You can kind of initiate a Sylvanas. And then also Lotus Sickle will give your teammates some extra prots, including stacked with your Sylvanas 2, gives them an additional 30 protection. So on top of that, you're basically giving them 50 of each protection.
Yeah.
So my build that I'd probably go instead of what he did here, I'd probably go alternate timeline. Instead of Axe. You can go Axe if you really want to, but I'd go to alternate timeline. I just prefer it. Then go into a Thebes, because not only are you going to be just tankier for yourself, you're also going to be helping out your team slightly. Also, it's just a way better item than Cannoneers. Almost never go Cannoneers Caress. And then instead of Genji's, you could go Genji's if you really want to. I don't like it though, because it just doesn't pair well with Sylvanas. I think a better item for your team in general would be Silverman Talisman. Because it makes your entire team have more movement speed and a little bit more attack speed and more mana.
Helps Nut.
It goes into Nut, but it also helps out with the Morgan as well, because if you're giving the Morgan more movement speed, she thrives off of movement speed when she's invisible. So after that, I'd probably go into a Relic Dagger, upgrade it into an Eldritch Dagger, because you'll get extra prots with that. You'll be able to spam Blink and also your relics in general.
Yeah.
And then after that, Lotus Sickle, because then has a little bit of FizzD, so kind of like the talismans for the magical, then that will be a little bit of physical defense. At this point, you'll have 30% cooldown, around 190 to 200 of each prots, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but you have to also keep in mind whenever you use your 2, because of Lotus Sickle and the way Sylvanas' 2 works,
do way more.
You're gonna get 50 protections, so you're gonna get up to 250 of each protection.
Not accounting Eldritch Dagger too.
And then when you of course. So then when you go on to Eldritch Dagger on top of that, you're looking at close to 280 to 300 prots of each. Granted, you're just gonna be a little squishy when you're not using abilities or relics. And then last item, I would go Gem of Isolation. I think it's usually it used to be where like the last item on most Guardians, you'd go E-Staff. That used to be kind of the staple. It's still very good to go nowadays. But recently I've been liking going Gem of Isolation for that last item, just because you're basically just getting free CC every 2.5 seconds. It's actually kind of disgusting.
Yeah. Any shield that they have, like let's say Fafnir, if they have Shell with Pridwin, it does really good. So yeah, with that build, I just think it does so much more for your team. Not only for your team, but for yourself too. I mean, you get all that with what the build that we just talked. We'll go into it into the game as well. We'll give you a build there too, just so you can visually see it. But like that build is just so much better. Second, yeah, like he said, I can see what he's doing here, but I just don't think it was really all that. It's out of order. Certain items I just wouldn't go instead. It's kind of all over the place. So, with that in mind, what would you rate his build out of 10?
So, I was originally going to give it a 5.5, but just because I'm just talking about it and reiterating it, the fact that he's not really, there's just so many better items for being more team-oriented between Relic Daggers, disgusting on Sylvanas, because just being able to spam Blink ult, or getting Talisman in synergy with your Morgan and Nut. Sav just being a bad item. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Axe is okay, but not really necessarily on him. I'd rather go with that. And then Canyers is just the worst thing here.
Yeah.
Canyers and Sav just don't exist on this build at all. I was originally going to give him a 5.5, but I'm actually going to go to a 5 here. That's
the exact same thing I was going to do. I was going to give him a 5 as well.
Because every single thing in it is mid!
Yeah, Cannoneer's Grass is the worst offender here. I mean, like, the passive is just basically useless because the gold spooling in Joust is so high anyways. So, like, the gold is just negligible. It's a very cheap item. You can get a little bit of protections on. It's just not that great, though. Like, the game's going to go on. It's just not going to do much.
You can even see it with the gold spooling anyway. Like, the enemy team, I mean, granted they were winning, but the enemy team, like, you'd expect it to be like if you are losing and you have Canyons, like, okay, well, we're kind of making up the difference, but not really, because if you look at their gold, they're still 1,000 gold down, or like at least 600 to 700 gold down from them.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, with that in mind, give him a 5. Both give him a 5, actually. But yeah, we'll go into a game right now and give you a build. All right, and now we have our boy Sylvanas. Having a little bit of Discord issues in my computer is dog shit, so that's why we're cutting in and out. But we're gonna have him talk about Sylvanas, as he was really in the weeds with that build too. So we'll go ahead and let him talk about it.
All right, so kind of explained it a little bit before, but just since we're in the build section, Axe is fine on Sylvanas, because you get good protections late game, you do get procs. Personally, I'd rather have the cooldown late game, also being able to come back to life, and also just the procs in general, and the MP5 early from going Sands of Time, and then eventually upgrading it into an alternate timeline. So that's my preferable way to go, is alternate timeline. And then straight into a Thebes, because not only is it going to make you super tanky early game, but it's also going to be helping out your team, which is what your primary objective is going to be as Sylvanas. You're more of a true support, although you do have the opportunity. Sylvanas is very much similar to Jeb, in that you're basically helping out your team a lot, but then you can also initiate with a Blink ult, because it functions very similar to the way Geb's works. So...
One second, we're doing this again. All right, we back.
And then next, you're going to want to go into a Silverburn Talisman, because then you're going to have no mana issues whatsoever. It's going to help out with giving your team additional movement speed and also some attack speed. It's going to be extremely helpful for the Nut, because she's an auto attack base god. And then also the Morgan as well, because Morgan thrives off movement speed, especially with the fact that she always goes Dual Morb for the most part. And then next item, you're going to go into a Relic Dagger and upgrade it into an Eldritch Dagger. That's going to give you a little bit more movement speed, some tank stats. The primary function of that, though, is that you're going to be spamming your relics to help out your team and also to initiate a little bit. For the most part, on Sylvanas, you do always almost want to go Blink for that Blink ult to set up some damage, essentially, for your backline. At this point, you'll have 20% cooldown, some pretty good tank stats. The next item you want to go into is a Lotus Sickle. Not the best base stats around. They do have a little bit of physical defense to kind of round the defenses around, but the passive is whenever you heal somebody, which Sylvanas obviously whenever you use your wisps, you're going to be healing both your teammates. and yourself. You'll be getting additional protections, and that also synergizes very well with Sylvanas's too, because it gives people 30% protections as is. So in total, I believe you're getting around 50 protections of each whenever you use your 2, which is really, really good. On top of giving your teammates the extra 10 from Thebes. And then the last item, at this point, pretty good defense stats all around. Whenever you proc your 2, you'll have around 190 of each protection, maybe 200. And then whenever you proc your 2, you'll have around 250 of each prots. And then whenever you use a relic from Eldritch Dagger, you're basically capped out on defense at that point. You'll just be around 200 though whenever you're not using relics or your 2, which is generally okay for the most part. And then last item, you can go an E-Staff, like that's a traditional option to HP and everything like that, but currently, because of how much it's gotten buffed on a lot of Guardians last item, you kind of want to go into a Gem of Isolation, just because every 2.5 seconds, whenever you hit someone with an ability, you're going to be slowing them down by 30%, which is just massive. Another way you can help out your team and also set up, just basically getting free additional slows and CC, on top of also being able to get rid of enemy shields as well, because I know that Fafnir had a Pridwin, Reverent Pridwin as well.
Yep.
And yeah, that's pretty much your build.
But yeah, that's a very solid build. You get all the protections, like he was saying. Let me just turn my camera back on real quickly. We're obviously having Discord issues and stuff like that, but you kind of get the gist here. You get a lot of protections, like you said. You get up to 300 protections. A couple items that I'd like to pay attention to is Pridwin. Pridwin is a very awesome, another item here that I think is really good. I'm actually gonna turn on my camera if I get just slowing down my computer. Won't have these issues soon. But Reverend Pridwin for the cooldown as well. You can interchange that with a Lotus Sickle if you'd like. And then you have Spirit Robe as other items as well, as you get interchange for Sickle if you wanted more protections without the benefit of the passive, or Mantle of Discord as well. Just some other items that you can think of as well for this build. But obviously a very, very solid build. Definitely better than the original one that we looked at. So there is your Sylvanas build, and we'll finally go into the Morgan next. All right, and then we got our boy Elion playing the Morgan. Also another god that's not traditionally that great unless you're just better with her. She's already a hard god to play with, so definitely a high skill ceiling. If you're good with her, you can make things work. But with her build, her build, this is probably the best build that there is on their team. One of the main things, and I've talked to a couple people about this, with Morgan, your main job is to kill the backline, whether it's one backline or two backlines, depending on the team comp. With theirs, it's going to be the Rajan, as she's very tanky, pretty tanky. So one of the main things that you want to do as the Morgan is basically kill the backline. So your main focus is just to go invis, catch the backline out of position. If you're a good Morgan player, you can obviously transform into like a Fafnir, Serket, or any of the other gods there, so you can like do things, make things work. And if you're playing, or if the person who's playing it is Elion, then he's obviously going to be very good with the Morgan. So he, I guess this build is specifically, it looks like it's specifically to kill that backline. I don't know if he was actually doing that, but you may see this though, because he got four kills out of the 6 kills that they had on their team. So on to the build. I think it's pretty solid. Gem of Focus, very good. Obviously does a lot of burst damage. Your only other option would be Sand of Time, and you're obviously not going to do as much damage as you would with Gem of Focus. That and Conduit Gem earlier in the game. With killing the backlines, Flat Pen's going to be way more valuable than Percent Pen would be. Now, the one thing with the Morgan is that she's not going to do a lot of damage to the tanks. She's basically also another god that can just set up for that as well, for maybe like Nut, we can do damage. But like I said, you're just kind of killing the backline. So Flat Pen's gonna be really good. So Chronos Pennant just for the extra cooldown. I would have done Spirit Deso a little bit earlier just because of the early Flat Pen that it gives. I think rushing Deso into Chronos would be better here. But these items are very good. Charon's coin is not the greatest. Now it does give you movement speed, HP 5 and stuff like that, and so that will be good. Ideally, Sylvanas will be building Talisman of Energy, so you really wouldn't need Charon's. So I think the only item in this build that's not the greatest is probably Charon's. Next up, we have Doom Ore, which actually it got a buff, so it's a lot better. And I think it's a very niche item for gods like the Morgan, who benefit greatly off this, or a god like Poseidon, for example. And specifically for what Morgan does, you do want flat pen. So Doom Orb I think is also a must. And then obviously Polly, I mean, you weave in autos so easily with her abilities. You do so much damage. You can basically one shot at level 20. So yeah, the only thing I really don't like about this build is Charon's. I think what I really would have done is I would have built, I think Polly's a little bit later into the build as well. Doom Orbs is still an expensive item, so I don't mind it being later in the build. But I probably would have went Polly instead of Charon's. Doom Orb would have stayed there. You can interchange Doom Orb and Polly if you wanted to, but I like Polly earlier just to have it online. Quicker, do more damage. And then last item might either go Rod of Tahuti or Soul Reaver. But generally speaking, his build is really good for what he's supposed to do. I don't know if he did that. You don't really need percent pen. You're not going to do much to tanks anyways. And even if you build percent pen, you're really not going to do much anyways. She kind of plays like a jungler. You just kill the back line. So besides, Charon's coin, I don't think it's the worst item in the world. It's a pretty solid item, and generally speaking. So it's not like a bad item. Just don't think it's great here. Besides that, and then obviously Polly being out of order, I think this build is pretty solid. So I don't know. You probably think of the same thing, Mike. I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna say I pretty much agree with majority, if not everything you just said. I like the pretty much the whole objective Morgan here. She's not really supposed to be building a whole lot of pen, more so flat pen than anything else. Just trying to kill the backline, and then after that, it's 3v2 essentially, getting rid of the main damage dealer. Then now you're an advantage for the rest of the team fight. Gem of Focus, I believe, is better than Sands of Time, especially because it synergizes with her kit better. You get the extra movement speed and a damage increase. And then Chronos Pendant, probably go into Spear of Death, so just for that early game flat pen, and then Chronos Pendant, and then after that, although Chronos Pendant, or Chiron's coin rather, isn't the worst item in the world, it's still, this ability is just full on damage, which in the end is good. I just switched around some things, so Chiron's coin, not the worst in the world, but I'd prefer to just opt out, go for a Poly first, because now that you've got like 3 damage items at that point, you'll be able to actually utilize Poly pretty well. After that, into Doom Orb, because you get more flat pen and movement speed and just a bunch of power. And then the last item, like you were saying, either a Soul Reaver or a Rod of Tahuti. I'd probably go with the Rod of Tahuti, just to basically accentuate that extra, that basically just assassin feel, just killing people at the very end.
Especially with the Rod of Tahuti passive.
I can definitely see an argument though to be made for Soul Reaver just because of the tanks on their team.
Yeah. It also just gives more damage as well too, so that's also very good. But yeah, with that being said, what would you give his build out of 10?
So, like I said before, full damage build. It's got poly in it, it's got flat pen, it's got cooldown, everything. I would just switch around the ordering a bit, and I just would prioritize more damaging and trying to finish off people's type of items, such as like Rod of Tahuti or Soul Reaver over Charon's coin. So overall, it's a pretty good build. Just a few little tweaks here and there. I'd give it a 9 out of 10.
Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking I'll give him a 9.5.
Amazing.
It's a little, my score's a little inconsistent compared to others because I am just getting rid of a whole item and switching around, so I should give him a 9, but I still think you fuck with this build, and with this team comp, I don't really think that the problem was with him, for him losing. I think he was probably doing well for the most part, playing a Morgan in Joust, so I'd give him a 9.5. I could be swayed to give him a 9 because, like I said, you get rid of one item and then switching it, but just because I think this build still fucks, I'd give him a 9.5. But we're gonna go in game to we're gonna go really quickly because the build doesn't really change much, but we'll go in game to give you that look at the actual build. All right, so here's her build. Just gonna go ahead and quickly go through this. I'm actually gonna close on my camera because, as you can see, the FPS fucking lag. Anyways, Gem of ISO, Conduit Gem, still very good. In Joust, the nerf to the true damage to minions, not that big of a deal. So, you know, having Conduit Gem for the extra damage, because the passive still does 40 to gods, is still going to be very good. And obviously going into Gem of Focus is going to be very good for her in her kit. Spirit of Desolation. He went Chronos first, which isn't the worst thing. I still do that sometimes on accident. But generally speaking, you want to go Spirit of Desolation. And obviously, you know, if they have a lot of healing, then Divine Ruin. Unfortunately, you'll have to go here. You're going to have to forego the cooldown, but you're going to have to go Divine if you need that anti-heal. Chronos Pendant. Obviously, for that cooldown, you have 30% cooldown. With Conduit and Gem of Focus not giving you any cooldown, you do want to make sure you build some of that cooldown to compensate for that. And after this, I'd go into a Polynomicon. I think third item is very good for this. You don't want to build this on too late, because you want to make sure you don't want to wait till the last level 20 to be able to one-shot to interweave your poly. I think you want to go poly first before you go into Doom Orb. Doom Orb I think is really good with its buff and its niche capability on Morgan. I think it's really good. On top of the flat pen that you're going to be getting to kill the squishies, I think it's very good to build this fifth item. You're building flat pen late, which sounds weird, but it is a very expensive item still, $28.50. So you want to make sure you get these items on first before then. And now you can make an argument to go poly after Doom Orb, but I don't think you really should, but you can if you would like. And then in my opinion, I think you go Rod Up to Hootie and then into Perfected Rod Up to Hootie, because if you don't know what Perfected does, it does give you some movement speed and reduces your ability cooldowns, which is going to be a lot better for her. Other items that you can think of is probably Soul Reaver. Soul Reaver is really good as another item you could go. And that's basically everything that there is for this build. Again, just one-shotting the backline as the Morgan. And yeah, that's basically your Morgan build for this specific team comp. All right. So went over all three builds. Pretty fun to do, especially seeing as they don't play Joust. So I think our builds are definitely a lot better than what their builds are here for, and definitely against their team. Obviously, it's a lot harder to, you know, build in the moment, especially if you don't play this game mode a lot, so you don't know the specific quirks, ins and outs. Specifically with me too, like I don't play Conquest a lot, so certain items I'm like, dude, this is a busted item in Joust, it doesn't translate over to Conquest and vice versa. So it does make sense that some of these items are a little out of place for Joust. You take a look at these builds; they're pretty solid. Pretty go-to builds that I would go as well for them. So that's basically it. Again, if you like to join a Discord down below, send me a screenshot of a game or something you'd like me to go over, please do so. Otherwise, we're going to be going over some other gamers builds as well. I mean, we did Cosmos and Barty, like I said before, and now we're doing Weak3n, Elion, and Inbound, former SBL players. So I'm always down to do this. Probably going to look at other teammates builds, or you know, some of the people in the Discord who do message me. So I hope you like the video. If you have any suggestions, feedback, let me know in the comment section down below. We still have our tournament going on. I think I'll put a card at the beginning of the video. There's still a couple slots open if you'd like, slowly going away. So if you do like to be a part of that, remember you have to be part of the Discord. Just look at the description of that. But it's a ranked Joust tournament, $300 worth of gems for your team. But yeah, that's basically it. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching.